Just about the only event making news today in northwest Ohio is the massive blizzard which struck during the night and continued throughout the day. We'll take a look at what the storm did and reaction to it in a moment on the Toledo 11 News.
Welcome into this edition of the WTOL 11 Vault on Plus. I'm Jeff Smith. Today we are diving deep back into our archives, and we're not just talking beta and 3/4-inch tapes. We're going to go back to the days of film for an event that is unforgettable for anyone who lived through it.
WTOL TV, Toledo. Straight from the newsroom, this is Toledo 11 News.
Good evening. Ohio's worst blizzard produced winds of 75 miles an hour today, whipping and drifting snow into dense white fog, downing power lines and rendering travel almost impossible. Entire cities were without electrical power. Airports were closed in Toledo and elsewhere. Nearly all state and interstate highways were closed or hazardous. Some Ohio National Guard units have been mobilized, including the 323rd Military Police Company in Toledo. More on that later in the broadcast. Citizens are asked not to call the Guard for help. Instead, call your police department, and they'll relay any messages. Governor Rhodes declared a state of emergency after learning that at least 150,000 homes were without electricity. Schools, most city and county offices, and many businesses were closed throughout the state. We'll have a list of those later on. The governor said 59 of the state's 88 counties asked for help, and he said, you can rest assured we're going to ask the federal government for money. Toledo was typical of Ohio cities almost crippled by the storm. At last word, some 25,000 customers of Toledo Edison were without electrical service. The storm started as rain and then heavy blowing snow. It made travel nearly impossible on streets and even on major expressways. Motorists who tried to move about and failed littered streets all around the city.
WTOL anchor Jeff Heitz right there. You're going to see more of him in just a bit. It was the worst winter storm in Ohio history. January 26th, with little warning, the blizzard of 78 hammered northwest Ohio. It started as rain, then it turned to snow, and then the snow just didn't stop. Transportation, business, also schools shut down across the state. Even the Toledo brands that the world relied on were stopped in their tracks.
But now that conditions have eased, the push is on to get the Jeeps on the move. Because the plant in Kenosha, Wisconsin will be closed next week, more than 100 trucks from there were sent here to transport these Jeeps to a waiting market. Charles, where will you be going?
To South Bend.
How many trips will you make this week?
Probably 3.
It's going to be a busy week.
Yeah, it's pretty busy around here.
But through it all, there were stories of survival, of people coming together and others looking to make the best of a bad situation.
It's clear going until someone pulls the blizzard card. That changes the whole character of the game. The board is flipped over, and the New York State Thruway, which was once sunny, is now hazardous, with frozen fuel lines, dead batteries, and today's problem in Toledo, stalled cars.
You feel you are making light of what was a serious event for Northwest Ohio, at least.
Yeah, I think some of the people think along those lines, but I had it as bad as anyone, and we were without power and water and one thing or another, but I still think that a blizzard only comes along maybe every 100 years. So, I think it's a memorable occasion, and we're not trying to cash in on anything. We're just trying to give the people what they really want.
During last year's blizzard, a friend of mine who lived in Toledo all his life said, well, this was a once-in-a-lifetime blizzard. Then we had the blizzard of 1978. I think next January I'll plan to be out of town.
How about that? It wasn't the only headline that January weekend that topped the news in the days and weeks that came next. In fact, take a look at this. Shay, thank you. I'm going to read you some of these headlines from back in the day. This paper actually from Monday, January 30th. They had days where they could not print. They couldn't get into work to actually print the newspaper. But the headlines read, 6 Wood Countyans perish in blizzard of century. A couple of more articles coming to you. I'm going to read a couple of more of these headlines. The Daily Sentinel Tribune, once again, blizzard's cost in county cannot be estimated at this point. That was the headline on January 31st. And finally, area emergency calls reach trickle. That was February 1st, 1978. Some of the headlines there. And this also coming from a guy who's talking to you who was 5. I was 5 and I lived at 1593 Tennyson Drive in Temperance, Michigan, looking out my back window, seeing nothing. You know what I saw? White, because that's all that could be seen from the snowdrift that was up against the sliding glass window. And as the blizzard of 78 rolled in, temperatures plunged by over 30 degrees in just hours. Extreme winds, they followed up with the heavy snow with gusts of 50 to 80 miles per hour, but in some cases as strong as 100 miles per hour. In all, 51 people died. The power was out, people were trapped, and the situation was serious.
Early this morning, this is how all of northwest Ohio looked from about 1,000 feet in the air. Strangely enough, from that height, the severity of the storm could not be appreciated. There was movement on I-75 in both lanes. That mostly was truck traffic, although a number of semi-rigs were still abandoned in the drifts. In Bowling Green, there was some activity on the roads. Most of that seemed to be four-wheel drive vehicles and some units of the federal troops airlifted into this area yesterday. By and large, there was little movement of note. As the National Guard chopper swung eastward above the communities of Fremont, Fostoria, Bettsville, Elmore, and Genoa, the only distinguishing landmarks to identify those snowbound communities were the city's water towers. In most cases, the streets in the towns appeared open and passable, but there was little traffic and few people were out walking. As our chopper would swing low, groups of people helping one another dig out would stop and wave. The roads linking many of the rural communities seemed passable, but certainly were snow and ice covered. For many, it was a time of relief, being dug out by friends or the Guard or the Army. And such was the case for one resident of a mobile home court in Bowling Green.
Kind of like a nightmare. Looking out the window there, we couldn't even see the van when it was blowing and snowing. And then we get the word, somewhere around about 3 o'clock Friday afternoon, they were going to get us out. And we waited till about 8 till they got snow out. And we made one cut through it, and then they took us up to the VFW building.
Moore was just one of thousands who was relieved to be out from behind a wall of snow. But many more northwestern Ohioans are still looking for that heavy equipment to dig them out in the aftermath of the blizzard of 78. Chuck Kruger, Toledo 11 News.
Stranded motorists in the area had to scramble to find some shelter today, and communities responded with help. In Toledo, the sports arena's main event was lending a hand. Judy Krause is there this evening with a live minicam report. Judy?
Jeff, it's pretty quiet right now, but 50 or 60 people have passed through here today where the Red Cross has set up a shelter, and they'll provide food and, of course, cots for people to sleep on. And they're also taking people to motels and residences. It's a place for travelers, and there have been some from Windsor, Ontario, and Lansing, Michigan. One couple from there was going to Florida. They're staying in a hotel here tonight. One couple is with me here tonight. They're from Northwood. They were without electricity. Judy, would you tell me what was going on this morning when you woke up?
Well, when I got up, I knew there wasn't going to be any school, and I knew right away that there wasn't any heat, so I checked the heat, and it was 60 then. And within 2 hours, it was down to around 35. And around 3 o'clock, then, we don't know how cold it was, but it had to be around 30 or past.
And you live in a mobile home?
Right, a trailer. It's our first year, and it'll be our last. My husband and I tried to fix the gas furnace, but the blower just went out. So we put the children in our bed and bundled them up, and there was no way to get out.
What ages are your kids?
Carrie's 2 and Heather is 6.
Were you ever afraid that this might be it for you?
Yeah, see, towards the end, I did.
How'd you get out?
How did we get out? Larry's mother called the Red Cross, and they had called us, and they said they were down about a block away, but they couldn't get to us any further. So they came to our house and had to climb our fence. Our fence was frozen shut, our gate, so we had to climb it. But
so you made it. Then you made it here. Yeah. Okay. Also with me is Stan Mock. He's a truck driver from Pennsylvania. What happened with you?
Well, I got stranded on 75, Perrysburg exit, where nobody's moving.
Where were you from exactly, and where were you going?
Well, I'm out of Johnstown, PA, and I'm going to Toledo up here for it to drop in steel.
Well, you got that far anyway.
Yeah, if the plant wasn't shut, I'd be unloading and going.
Did you have an accident, or what happened exactly?
No, the road just shut, the traffic stopped, and I just pulled in right behind the rest of them and stayed her there and hung her up.
How'd you get out?
Well, a guy came down in a van and picked me up and brought me up here.
Okay, Jeff, that's what's going on here. Some are going to be staying the night. Others are, like I said before, being taken to motel or private residences who are willing to take these people in for the night. This is Judy Krause, live from the sports arena.
Wow, temperatures dropping to 35 degrees in that trailer. In all, the blizzard dumped about 13 or more inches of snow. The drifts, they piled up 15 feet or more. That left thousands stranded and tens of thousands without power. Toledo 11 News asked then Mayor Doug DeGood if the city was ready for this type of weather.
A pile of messages on his desk and a schedule full of meetings awaited the mayor, but as things began settling down, there's time for reflection. I asked Mayor DeGood if Toledo was caught unprepared by the devastating storm.
Well, we'll have to take a look at that after the whole situation settles down. There was some confusion as it related to the Red Cross, the Salvation Army, the city of Toledo, and in some instances people who live outside the corporate limits of Toledo start phoning into our numbers. So there's probably some things we can do there to help remedy that a bit in the future.
We may get a good chance because it looks like the weather is going to turn sour again. Are we making any plans there?
Well, we're catching up on what's already occurred. We've got about 100% of the streets cleared, the major streets. Those carry over 10,000 vehicles a day. Those that carry between 3,000 and 10,000 vehicles a day are now 95% clear, and those small residential streets are about 65% clear. So I think we'll get on top of it hopefully before the next one occurs.
City officials say that they think, or at best hope, the worst of the weather is behind us. But when you see them walk down the front steps of the safety building, they look skyward. It may be they want some divine inspiration, or they could be just checking the weather. I'm Mel Martin, Toledo 11 News, with a minicam at the safety building.
So you heard it from that truck driver. I-75 was closed, and it was closed for 3 days at the end of January that year. Part of I-475, it was shut down for 6 days. And the Ohio Turnpike, it closed for the first time in its history. It took an army of snowplows to get things moving again.
With most of the city's 625 miles of residential streets looking like this, impossible and impassable, officials in the city's Streets, Bridges, and Harbors Division started signing up small snowplow operators over the phone. About 60 called in for work. Their names were put on a list, and then they waited to be called. The private contractors will be paid $30 an hour, and they were assigned specific areas of the city to plow.
There's over 120 routes, so it looks right now like we'll have each operator covering about 3 routes apiece if we don't get any more volunteers.
How many miles is that?
Each route is approximately 5 miles.
And you also have some contractors with large equipment, right?
The larger private contractors are out on the main streets like Alexis Road and Detroit and so forth, clearing drifts, yes.
How many of those do you have?
We have 9 contractors, and the last I heard we had 14 pieces of equipment out.
City officials are of course hoping that the work of their own employees and the efforts of the private contractors will get the streets cleared, the residential ones too, and get Toledoans once again on the move. I'm Judy Krause, Toledo 11 News with the minicam.
Business is brisk despite clogged roads. Many walked, some for a mile to get to the stores. Others were snowmobiled, while the lucky ones drove in four-wheelers. Shelves are full in connection with non-perishable items such as canned goods and toilet paper. Fresh vegetables seem to be in good supply, but bread and milk supplies are sparse in most stores. The reason? People are buying large numbers of an item when they might not have to.
The only problem that we're having at this time is the fact that the people are hitting us so fast, and we have not had a chance to replenish, but we have made arrangements for everything to be back in these stores. And we are making arrangements now for the people to handle everything once it gets back in the stores. We've really had great cooperation from the customers and our own people. We've got some checkers that been working basically around the clock to help the customer get their groceries and get out.
Perhaps the best indication that people are taking this crisis in stride is the fact that beer shelves in many stores are empty. Sales began briskly at 6 o'clock last evening and have been going strong ever since. Evidently, people are getting in the spirit of the blizzard of '78. I'm Randy Little, Toledo 11 News with the minicam in Southland.
Did you see that one case of Bud Light? It had been opened, and apparently people were just taking a few beers here and there. Today, we are used to plenty of warning in most weather situations. The technology has changed rapidly over the last 47 years, but the weather reporters of the time, they were just as dedicated to protecting the people and keeping them safe.
Outlying areas have been hard hit as well, their locations making the weather-related problems even more critical. Mel Martin has been keeping up with the situations out there, and here's his update. Mel?
One dispatcher put it very well to me this afternoon. Jeff, he said he's going to go home and kick the first snowman he can find on the way. The situation, it's easy to joke about, but it actually is very serious, especially in rural areas where communications are bad. There's a lot of flat land, which allows the winds to blow and the drifts to get very, very bad. Wood County's got some particular problems, especially in Bowling Green. Mayor Al Perkins told me shortly before airtime about 50% of the town has no electrical service. Water pressure is coming up slowly after being out all day. The National Guard is assisting down there. Mayor Perkins told me that the main concern tonight is citizens who do not have heat. Findlay, down in Hancock County, 33,000 Ohio Power customers without power. That situation is expected to remain pretty much the same as it is until tomorrow. The YMCA on East Lincoln Street is taking people who are in need of some help. In Sandusky County, the National Guard has been called up, but they're not able to do very much and hardly move because of massive drifting of snow. Most rural areas in the Sandusky County are without power, and cities have intermittent or spotty electrical service. In Erie County, the city of Sandusky has been hard hit. The county sheriff there didn't wait for Governor Rhodes to declare an emergency, so he did it himself this morning. They're also having water problems. Travelers can get help at Good Samaritan Hospital.
President Carter declared a federal disaster in Ohio on the evening of January 26th, and that meant 300 federal troops based out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina, headed north to the Buckeye State. The federal troops were airlifted to Toledo Express, along with Arctic gear and plenty of heavy equipment.
Equipment and soldiers have been arriving at the 180th Tactical Fighter Group Air National Guard area since late yesterday, when it was announced that the Army would be pulling out. For 24 hours a day, Army engineers have been the only link with the outside world for hundreds of snowbound residents of Wood, Ottawa, Hancock, and Lucas County. It may be the soldiers' prerogative to complain, but the task force commander in charge of the 400 airborne troopers in Northwest Ohio says the men were glad to be here.
We have other requirements on us back home, and that's the reason we got to get on the road. But the troop himself, the one who has been the operator running the dozer, would just as soon stay. And I think probably this is based primarily on the fact that the people have been appreciative and have assisted and thanked him for the effort that he put forth.
Colonel, how have you felt about the kind of support that you've received since you've been here?
Well, the support basically has been from the Ohio National Guard, and it's been tremendous.
The original orders permitted the Army to stay in the four-county area for up to 14 days, but county engineers and federal officials decided yesterday the soldiers' job was done. As the equipment rolled into the Air National Guard facility, it was washed to Air Force specifications, then assembled in the 180th Fighter Group's hangar to await C-141 transports. The first Starlifter arrived at about 3 this afternoon. Army and Air Force personnel immediately began setting up ramps for the loading process.
8 pieces of heavy road clearing equipment and 25 men will be leaving on C-141 transport planes like this one today. The rest of the 27th Airborne Engineering Battalion will be returning to Fort Bragg, North Carolina by this time tomorrow, taking with them the thanks of a lot of people from Northwest Ohio for a job well done. Bob Lawrence, Toledo 11 News with the minicam at Toledo Express Airport.
Once things started to clear up, it was time to try to get back to business. That was the case for Toledo Jeep. Dealerships around the globe, they were waiting for their shipments of the iconic vehicles built right here at home. So it was back to work.
Trucks are being loaded with Jeeps. 4,000 to 5,000 of the vehicles have been stranded here because the blizzards in the Midwest and Northeast halted rail and truck transportation. But now that conditions have eased, the push is on to get the Jeeps on the move. Because the plant in Kenosha, Wisconsin will be closed next week, more than 100 trucks from there were sent here to transport these Jeeps to a waiting market. Charles, where will you be going?
The South Bend.
How many trips will you make this week?
Probably 3.
Gonna be a busy week.
Yeah, it's pretty busy around here.
These trucks will carry the Jeeps to a 13-state area, as close as Detroit and as far away as 600 miles to points in New York and Virginia. About 100 loads a day will be sent from here. The company hopes to have all the Jeeps delivered in 10 days, delivered to dealers who found the big blizzard encouraging customers but hampering sales at the same time. I'm Judy Krause, Toledo 11 News with the Minicam.
In the days that followed, there were more and more stories of people trying to work together, our community rallying, neighbors lifting up one another. Others found a different way to make sure that they never forgot the blizzard of '78.
If you get cabin fever, you can play the Blizzard of '77. It was created out of the blizzard a year ago, which hit Buffalo, New York. And you start out the game on the sunny side of the street. Object of the game is to get from home to 5 destinations, such as a bank or work, and then back home. It's clear going until someone pulls the blizzard card. That changes the whole character of the game. The board is flipped over, and the New York State Thruway, which was once sunny, is now hazardous, with frozen fuel lines, dead batteries, and today's problem in Toledo, stalled cars. Land on a blizzard space, and you pull a card with uncanny coincidences between Buffalo and Toledo's blizzard, such as mail delivery being stopped, the National Guard and Army units being called out, and the Salvation Army delivering food. It's not yet known if the game company will come out with a Blizzard 78 game dealing with the city of Toledo. There is a limited supply of the games in the Toledo area. Meanwhile, Toledoans will go out and play the real-life game with the Blizzard of '78. I'm Randy Little, Toledo 11 News with the Minicam in downtown Toledo.
Yes, this winter has been a bit much. You might even say memorable. The winter storms sweeping much of the nation have proven once again that dear old Mother Nature still holds the pat hand and plays her trumps at will. Of course, some people say that in every cloud there's a silver lining. And for 3 Northwest Ohio firms, that lining is silver indeed. The firms are marketing Survivor T-shirts. These are message shirts which let others know that the wearers survived the blizzard of '78. Of course, those on the East Coast may well think all this survivor talk is premature. Do you feel you are making light of what was a serious event for Northwest Ohio, at least?
Yeah, I think some of the people think along those lines, but I had it as bad as anyone, and we were without power and water and one thing or another, but I still think that a blizzard only comes along maybe every 100 years, so, you know, I think it's a memorable occasion, and, you know, we're not trying to cash in on anything, we're just trying to give the people what they really want.
2 of the firms are located in the Toledo area, and the third is in Napoleon. And all 3 already have T-shirts on the market. Whatever the location, workers are doing a brisk business taking orders by phone or through the mail. And in each case, it only took days to mobilize.
Well, Thursday, while I was looking out my back window and watching everybody struggle and myself struggling on down to the supermarket later that day, I decided we needed something to commemorate this crazy event. And so I decided, let's go with a T-shirt.
Now, how long did it take you to mobilize?
It took us just about 24 hours to mobilize, and that was it. Until the time that we had T-shirts available in the newspaper, ads on TV, it was about 24 hours.
I don't know how many of these T-shirts will be around come August, but they're bound to be a big seller over the next few weeks as we look back and remember the big blizzard of 1978. I'm Jim Proctor, Toledo 11 News with the Minicam at the old Denim Factory.
That's great. Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan, they have not experienced anything like this since. And when it happened, it was the only thing people were talking about. And if you didn't find a way to change your perspective, you'd be left out in the cold.
Think back. Did you talk about anything else for the last week? Probably not. We all had snow stories. The woman who lost her car in a drift, the man who slept in his car to avoid walking in drifts, the Buffalo, New York jokes, the sale of sun lamps, snow shovels, and snow blowers, the non-sales of milk and bread. But there were advantages to the storm, only faintly glimpsed through reduced visibilities and the icy fingers of the cold wind. Drivers saw more of Toledo. It was hard not to when you were skidding sideways. In a good skid, you could get a panoramic view. The storm brought us together. The pundits say human stress always does. Even cars came together, locking fenders with fenders, buildings with fenders, even pedestrians with fenders. And our perspective changed. Someone once called this area's appearance a pool table with soybeans. Now it looked like oatmeal with lumps. The lumps were houses, cars, factories, and a truck or two, or three, or four. Then there were rumors. Rumors that the snow had stopped. The snow was starting. 49 inches were coming in the next hour. The National Guard was here. The National Guard wasn't coming. The Guard was late, or early, or took one look at it all and said, let's get out of here. During last year's blizzard, a friend of mine who'd lived in Toledo all his life said, well, this was a once-in-a-lifetime blizzard. Then we had the blizzard of 1978. I think next January I'll plan to be out of town. I'm Mel Martin, Toledo 11 News, with the minicam.
Don't you love some of the writing we've heard in these pieces? You heard several mentions, by the way, throughout this episode of The Vault on Plus of the minicam. WTOL 11 made history on November 12, 1975, as the first Toledo station to broadcast live using the revolutionary piece of technology. That first report was from the National Weather Service at Toledo Express Airport. And Toledo 11's Joe Ashton covered storm developments day after day, just days, in fact, after the Edmund Fitzgerald tragedy. In fact, we had 3 minicams around 1978. That's more than all the other news stations in Toledo combined. And so, the blizzard of '78 remains etched in Toledo's memory, a storm of unparalleled fury that tested our resilience and brought our community together in ways that we will never forget. From the howling winds and towering snowdrifts to the extraordinary efforts of our neighbors and first responders. It was a moment in history that proved our ability to endure and rebuild. Thank you so much for joining us on WTOL 11 Vault on Plus as we look back on one of the most defining events in our region's history. We leave you with one last look back at the 6 o'clock news in the middle of the blizzard of '78.
And we understand what you might...
TARTA buses will not run anymore tonight or tomorrow. They hope to be on the road if the roads are clear tomorrow. They're not clear in Indiana, I understand.
No, that's the shortest Indiana road report I've ever seen. It just says all roads are closed and impassable due to the snow, and that's pretty much the situation here as well. Blizzard warnings remain up for Toledo and vicinity until midnight tonight.